Welcome, everyone. I am Izzy Jacobs, here with my wonderful group of John Ellis, Andrew Dombrowski, Peter Pavlidis, and Brianna Hamill. We are all students from Northwestern Connecticut Community College and all members of Team Success Scholars. For this video, we were tasked with researching the challenges facing formerly incarcerated people as they enter the social reentry process. Our presentation topics include employment, housing, family support, voting, and mental health. Before we begin, please take a moment and think about your life with the support and freedom that you have right now. You can get a job, live anywhere, have access to all means of care. Now imagine day one of being released from prison and you have none of that. The accessibility is gone. How successful would you be? Things happen, and in all seriousness, that could be you or me. With this in mind, let's get started with our presentation on employment delivered to you by John.
Welcome, everybody. I'm John, if you don't know me already. And today I have a slide presentation on jobs for the formerly incarcerated, which basically means that you have been in jail for one reason or another. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So for those of you who may not exactly know who the formerly incarcerated are or what exactly the formerly incarcerated are, basically, it means previously imprisoned. Previously imprisoned as in you've been to jail. But just because you've been to jail, even though it may be a little more difficult to find a job, that doesn't mean that it's impossible. And that's what we're here to show today. So mainly there's two types of offenses. There's your minor offense, and then there's your serious or major offenses. So minor offenses are something like stealing a little bit of money or, a can of soup, something inexpensive. Serious offenses are more along the lines of like murder, bank robbery, car theft, but no matter the offense, there's still a chance that you can find a job. So there's still hope. Certificate of employability. Now, some of you may not know exactly what a certificate of employability is, but according to the judicial branch of the state of Connecticut, it's a form of relief from the barriers or forfeitures to employment or the issuance of professional licenses as a result of a criminal conviction that may be granted to an eligible offender by the Court Support Services Division of the judicial branch. So basically what that means is it's a get into job free card. It's a way for the document to say, hey, you can hire this guy, he's okay. So I'll tell you right away, this is gold in the situation that you're formerly incarcerated and you're trying to find a job. This is absolute gold, and it almost guarantees you a job. So even if you don't have connections, you can still find a job, even though, connections make things easier, obviously. It's still not impossible if you don't, so don't worry. So after some research on Indeed and some other credible sources, we found that Walgreens looks back somewhere around 7 years. So if you've been out of jail for 7 years or so, you don't have to worry because they don't look back that far for a criminal record. But in most cases, if you're freshly formerly incarcerated, they still hire on a case-by-case basis. Walmart hires quite a few formerly incarcerated people, but again, cases still vary. And then you will almost always have a chance at being hired at food prep services such as 99 and other food prep services as well. So after some research, I found a few jobs that are available here in Connecticut. One of them being Busy Bee Roofing. He's willing to hire anybody regardless of previous offenses. Basically, you're just, doing roofing. Collinsville Auto Repair will hire previously accused of semi-minor crimes. If it's something big, they may not hire, but positions, they vary. So if it's a small job, you could probably get it. And most employers are willing to hire formerly incarcerated for things such as maintenance or, being a janitor. So helpful tips is let them know you're sorry. Let them know that, yes, you served your time, you committed the crime, but you learned your lesson. You're not going to do it again. You know that what you did was a bad thing. It wasn't right, and it's not going to happen again. Ensure them. Let them feel safe. You don't, they're not going to hire you if you say, yeah, and I'd do it again, totally. So let them know that, it's safe to hire you, and that, you're not going to rob them in the middle of the night or something. So this is where we would have some custom scenarios. Do you know someone who's getting out soon, or someone who has gotten out? We can let you know in general what sort of jobs may be available, depending on how severe the crime was and how long they served. Thank you for taking the time to go through this presentation with us today, and we hope you learned something from this. We hope you could take something from this, and even if you don't know anybody right now that is formerly incarcerated, maybe someday you will. You never know. So it's a good thing to know things like this, just in case. You can help them out a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And next we have Andrew presenting housing.
All right, my name is Andrew Dombrowski, and I'm going to be talking about housing for the formerly incarcerated. What happens if you are incarcerated for 10 years and then get released? If you're in this situation, you may be asking yourself, where will I go? Where will I live? Will I be able to get a job? Do I have any family support at all? Finding an apartment for someone who has been formerly incarcerated is very difficult, and is it legal to deny housing to someone with a felony convict? After looking into whether it is illegal or not, I found that under federal law, it's illegal for a landlord to discriminate against a tenant who has a felony conviction for drug use, but a landlord can discriminate against someone with a felony record for drug sale or manufacture, but it doesn't show where someone can be getting discriminated against, and it's not put on paper, and their application is basically just thrown out. Finding a place to stay may be difficult for those being released who aren't very tech savvy. Two of the places I found in Connecticut to find housing were apartments.com and by calling 211. When calling 211, they didn't seem to be as helpful as someone who is desperate and looking for housing may hope. And when I called, they told me to look at their website, which is www.201ct.org. And this may be a problem for someone getting out who may not have access to the internet and may just have a flip phone, or also may not know how to get onto the website and how to get around. After looking at the website, I found that there were housing vouchers and places where people can apply to get Section 8, which is a program that allows private landlords to rent apartments and homes at a fair market rate to qualified low-income tenants, where the cost of the rent is mostly covered by the government and the tenant only has to pay a smaller amount. But there are things that can disqualify someone from getting Section 8, and there is also a very long waiting list. So it's not very good of a guarantee for someone that is desperate for housing just getting released. The second place we looked was at apartments.com, and when using apartments.com to find a place, we found that it may be difficult for someone with a criminal record. After calling multiple landlords, we found that only one landlord said that they don't take tenants with criminal records, which means there can be more people out there, and there also can be the same discrimination where their applications are just thrown out. Those who were fine with tenants having a criminal record wanted to make sure that the applicants had both a sustainable income and even a few months' rent or even a security deposit, with one landlord saying that applicants couldn't have a credit score below a certain number, which makes it more difficult for people who are coming out to nothing and just need somewhere to stay. After discussing a criminal record and rent with the landlords, they said to fill out an application and to hand it in and they'll get back, which may be an issue since if the person's coming out and they only have, say, a flip phone, they won't have any way to get onto the website to fill out an application and hand it in. And with today, how things are today with the pandemic, there isn't very much in-person things. Next, there are a lot of local resources like Fish in Torrington and St. Vincent de Paul Mission Shelter in Bristol, which is a dorm setting place where there's no walk-ins and you must call and be put on a waiting list before being granted entrance. And it is a sober shelter, and you have to be out by a certain time and back in by a certain time every day. There's also the Salvation Army in Waterbury, which is a place for someone. Fish also helps with getting food. It's a 35-bed shelter that offers housing and vouchers and also food for those who need and are down on their luck or are coming home to nothing. And that is it.
Thank you, Andrew. And next we have Peter with voting.
Oh, great, it's slow. There we go. My name is Peter Pavlidis, and I will be presenting to you why felons should be allowed to vote. Okay. My colleagues have already gone over jobs and housing, but felons will need more than just jobs and housing. They'll need food, family support, mental health. My job is to show whether they could or if they even want to vote. A little bit of background information. District of Columbia, Maine, and Vermont, felons never lost their right to vote. That in essence means they could technically vote from prison if they wanted to. In 18 states, the felons only lost their right to vote whilst they were incarcerated. So while they're in, they can't vote. As soon as they're out, they can vote again. 19 states, they've lost it altogether. Once you're in, you lose it, and once you're out, you lose it. The general idea of why it is we shouldn't allow felons to vote is if they are not willing to follow the laws that are in place, why should we allow them to dictate laws for other people? Pretty simple concept. In my opinion, felons should be allowed to vote. Why? We all make mistakes. There was someone close to me who I knew who him and his buddy decided one day they were going to go out drinking. They had a nice old time. They got pretty sloshed. They decided to drive back home. They get into an accident. The driver, the guy I knew, survives. His best friend in the passenger seat did not. The guy I knew was convicted of manslaughter because he got his best friend killed. A little note, both of them were cops. Yeah. Think about that. He has the guilt of getting his best friend killed. Not a fun time. This one's a little more opinionated. The right to vote depends on what crime you did. Larceny, nonviolent drug crimes, or small drug possession, not a big deal. And small drug possession should really apply to everybody because that could be you. I know somebody watching this. I don't know who, but I know somebody has got some pot on them. State of Connecticut, ounce, little less than a ounce, you get a ticket. Little over 4 ounces, you get a felony charge. Everybody knows how little 4 ounces of pot actually is. So, crimes that I don't think entitle you to the right to vote: sexual assault, murder, violent drug crimes, and child endangerment. Those are a no-no for me. Governments put rules in this. Really, it varies from state to state, as shown with the background information. But what's interesting is state legislators, they determine the scheduling and how voters may register. So that technically means if they want to, they could let felons vote. Interesting prospect, right? Honestly, this is everyone's opinion. Either you want them to vote or you don't. But everyone makes mistakes. Think about that. Remember what I said about the pot? State of Connecticut, 4 ounces felony charge. That could be anybody. Should having that little pot require you to losing your right to vote? If you think so, think about it. If you get caught with that much, you will not have a voice to say whether or not it's right or wrong. My name is Peter Pavlidis, and this was my presentation.
Thank you, Peter. And next, I will present my presentation on family support. I'll share my screen. Okay. So, hi again, everyone. I'm Izzy Jacobs, and my presentation is about the support of family and close friends. Now, I'm going to be honest with you all really quick. Without family support, I would not be where I am today. My parents are the closest people to me, and without their guidance and nudging, I would have a very different life. So today, I ask, what does family support mean to you, and where would you be without it? So throughout my presentation, I'll be using words like FIP and recidivism, so I just wanted to define them for you all really quick. FIP means formerly incarcerated person or people, and recidivism is the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. So what does someone need in order to survive in the world today? Food, shelter, clothing, and all the basic necessities. Now, where does someone freshly out of prison find these things? One common and very successful source of these needs comes from that person's family. And those include mental health in the terms of emotional support, financial security. They could possibly give employment. They give housing opportunities, transportation, food security, and they promote public safety. Now, when it comes to public safety, after someone is released, this person may be angry about their situation, and families, especially moms, have a great ability to calm someone down and make them feel secure. And this carries over into keeping both them and the rest of the community safe. So I found a couple of resources that explain the impact family support has on recidivism, like I talked about earlier. The first one is a pamphlet written by the Center of Justice and Reconciliation, and it's called 10 Keys for Preparing Prisoners for Reentry. The beginning 3 steps of these 10 keys are about building constructive relationships. The first one is to find a mentor, whether that be a family member or a volunteer who can offer support and advice. Another is to reunite families. So sometimes when people go into prison, they disconnect from their family altogether. And in these cases like these, you want to rebuild and repair communication with the family. And then finally, you want to develop a community. That adds an additional support system, and this can involve faith-based communities or even some that are supported by the state, which I'll talk about later. Another resource that I found is the Safer Return Demonstration Project, and this was found in Chicago. And this project researches family-inclusive case management, which encourages keeping close family and friends involved in an individual's reentry process. They found that familial involvement decreases substance abuse, it increases public safety, like I talked about earlier, and leads to a very successful reentry into society. A third resource was called Bringing Families In, and it was a study done by Rutgers and the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. They found that formerly incarcerated people with strong family support result in lower recidivism rates, as I talked about earlier. Families help with finding and securing employment. It boosts the formerly incarcerated person's positive outlook, which means they're more confident in what they can achieve, and they build confidence in his or her own possibilities and abilities. Now, many confuse positive support with negative influence when it comes to the term of support from friends. What seems like comfort and help from loved ones when it comes to home, when someone comes home from incarceration, it could actually be influenced to move backwards into negative experiences. People like comfortability. It is very easy to go back into a normal routine, even if their routine had you end up in prison. Formerly incarcerated people come back to their own neighborhoods and reunite with family and friends, and it's very possible that what seems like support systems could turn into negative influence. So on this slide, I talk about negative influence and the idea that past pressures could lead you back into old habits, and seemingly positive support could actually be a very toxic situation and could lead to a regression from growth. So the goal is to try not to surround yourself with anyone or anything that would support you returning into negative illegal activity. So there are many situations where a formerly incarcerated person comes home and finds people or situations that could seem friendly at first, but could actually be detrimental to this person's growth. Learning from past mistakes becomes extremely important, and anything that could induce the same mistake, like illegal activity, should be avoided. So, in that pamphlet that I talked about earlier from the Center of Justice and Reconciliation, key number 6 was for formerly incarcerated people to identify friends, family members, locations, and circumstances that could cause a relapse in growth. The goal is to avoid these situations in order to continue moving forward and not relapsing in growth, as I just said. And you have to develop strategies to avoid them in order to be successful in your reentry process. So, for those looking for support outside of the family, many churches across the country have created different programs designed to aid formerly incarcerated people in their reentry process. Many of these programs begin even inside prisons and continue as that person is released. So some examples that I've included have been the All-in-One Community West Ohio Conference, Prison Fellowship, and Prison Ministry Welcome Home Reentry Program. Here in Connecticut, there are many different reentry programs not religiously affiliated that could provide support as well. Some have been listed on the screen for you. All of these programs assist or mentor those who are formerly incarcerated as well as their families. And also not mentioned on this list is the Northwestern Connecticut Reentry Council, which fights for reentry-related legislation and teaches about the different reentry processes. So, in order to succeed, this is what you need. A, you need to have optimism and a positive outlook. Having a negative outlook on your future leads you to moving nowhere. You need to be able to move forward and be positive about your abilities and where it can go. You need positive familial, preferably familial support. Your family will 99% sure will always be there for you. They want to help you. They love you and they want to help you. So having that positive support system around you is key for moving forward. And you want to stay away from poor influences, like I mentioned earlier. Surrounding yourself with people that want to keep you in the same spot are not positive for your growth or for your future. You want people that will help you move forward. And you can also look for additional reentry programs offered in a community, whether that's faith-based or state-sponsored. There are people out there that want to help you. So you can go ahead and look for them. They want to be there. So that was my presentation on family support, and next is Brianna's on mental health.
Hello, I'm Brianna Hamill, and I'm going to be talking about formerly incarcerated people and mental health. All right, so mental health is a really big concern for those who are incarcerated, and things such as overcrowding and solitary confinement really put the pressure on mental health. Mental health can include things such as anxiety and depression and could be as serious as schizophrenia. I found an article that talked about that they did a study in the United States about who has been incarcerated with diagnosed with mental illnesses. In state and federal prisons, 37% of people were diagnosed with mental illnesses and 44% in locally run jails, which is a very decent percentage of the people who have been incarcerated. In prison, there is a very limited amount of mental health programs. About 66% of incarcerated people reported having no mental health care at all. A lot of times they also don't feel physically or psychologically safe, which is a huge impact on their mental health. In the same study, 1 in 4 inmates experienced serious psychological distress while they were incarcerated. And in many cases, some prisons require a fee for those who need treatment. They can be working a little bit in prison, have like small little jobs, make little money, and have to use that for their treatment, or if they're not working in the prisons, they can't afford the treatment, so they don't get the treatment that they need. 50% of those who are incarcerated and were previously taking medication for their illnesses in prison, a lot of times they do not receive their medication that they are needed. It's usually people with schizophrenia or more serious mental illnesses that will receive their medication. So the first thing to go when there are pay cuts in prison is mental health care. Every time, mental health care is the first. They're like, we don't need it, it's fine. But really, it's a huge thing that's needed because of so many people have mental illnesses, even such as anxiety and depression. Um, Prison overcrowding really takes a toll on people's health. It's really hard to adjust to these overcrowded situations, and it could be correlated to self-harm. Um, Also, those who have mental health issues tend to have to serve longer prison terms because of the absence of an approved parole discharge plan that includes housing, psychiatric care, and substance abuse treatment services. And without that, they can't get out on parole, so they end up having to serve their either full-time or even longer terms. So solitary confinement, like I mentioned, is when they're in their cells for 23 or more hours a day. And there's also prolonged solitary confinement where they are in that cell by themselves for 15 days straight or more. And this is technically a form of torture that they use. Like if someone is behaving poorly, they put them here. But this is connected to a heightened amount of anxiety, panic, anger, rage, depression, which is still mental illness. All of those are mental illnesses. So, for example, we all, in the beginning of COVID, had to quarantine either with families or by ourselves. Those who are by themselves, they can kind of relate to this. Those with families, imagine that, but even worse. You're by yourself with nobody, no one to talk to, just there by yourself. You don't even have a phone. At least we had phones and computers and stuff for most of us. You have none of that. So you're literally by yourself in a cell with nothing, which has a very big toll on mental health, which some of us have experienced that while we had to quarantine. So after prison, most people end up not getting the treatment that they need because of how difficult it is to transition from in-prison treatment to out-of-prison treatment if they receive the treatment in prison. So it's really hard to get their files transferred out if they have them. It's hard to actually go out and find where they need to go, especially if they're just getting out of prison and they don't have like a phone, they don't have Wi-Fi, they don't have money. It's kind of hard for them to find the right treatment. Um, a lot of times they also suffer from long-term consequences, such as relying on institutional structure. This means that when they are in prison, they are they have a set structure of ways to live while they're in there, and they adapt to that way. And they don't get to make choices for themselves. Everything is set up, is scheduled for them. They don't like make any of their own choices. When they get out, they have to readapt to making their own choices and figuring out how to like readapt into normal life, which is a very difficult way to go about life. Yeah, so it's pretty hard for them after. So these are some resources that I found that are Connecticut based. Most of them are, these ones are just online, like you can just go on their website to find them. I couldn't find phone numbers for all of them, so people without a phone after they get out, or without Wi-Fi or internet, any of that, it will be difficult to find these resources. But if they have family members that are willing to help, it'll be a lot easier for them. There was one of them that I found a phone number for, and some of these have a fee, but some of them also has a sliding fee. So it's if you can't afford it, like they'll make it lower for you. Like as long as you're getting a job and stuff, like you'll be able to pay for them. Some of them are free though, which is very helpful. And some also take certain insurances. So for example, one of them says they take Medicaid eligible adults. So like if you have Medicaid, you get that, you can use that as either full pay, partial pay, whatever like they need it to be. And these are a few more resources that I found that were city-based. And these ones I did find phone numbers for, so those of us, so those people who don't have access to internet to go onto their websites to find them, they can find the phone numbers and give them a call to actually find the help that they need. And these are just some of the sources that I used. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Brianna, and thank you to all of our other presenters on their hard work. I hope that our project has taught you something new and that you have gained a better understanding for the challenges of the reentry process. Thank you all.